Blencowe Resources has one of the most interesting graphite projects anywhere in the world. This particular project, the Orom-Cross project, is in Uganda, and Mike Ralston joins us now to tell us a bit more about it. So, Mike, why don't we just kick off by you giving a quick introduction to Blencowe and Orom-Cross, and then we can get into the more details a bit more deeply.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me again. For those who don't know, Blencowe Resources owns 100% of the Orom-Cross graphite project located in Uganda, a fabulous jurisdiction to develop a long-term project. We've had nothing but help and support from the government there. It's an extraordinary project. It's got about 2 to 3 billion tons of graphite, most of it near to surface. So it's going to be very low cost in terms of getting it out and processing it and getting it to market. It's a project that we've been developing for about 5 years now. We've gone through various stages, drilling, TFS, and now we're in the latter stages of the definitive feasibility study. And we hope to get that completed around the middle of this year so we can move forward to that decision to mine. So great project, and we think it's a great time to be in graphite going forward.
So you mentioned the feasibility study. Tell us a bit more about that in terms of the proposed scale of the project, the resource base that you're going to be working off, and the progress towards completion.
Yeah, and I think the key with graphite is how you sell it. With most other minerals or metals, typically you're either selling into a mint if it's a precious, or into a metals market if it's a base metal. But with graphite, you have to go through a pre-qualification process that typically takes several years because you've got to get bulk samples into OEMs and ultimately get them to test it in their own facilities. So the whole process of selling has been one of the most sort of not difficult, but I guess challenging parts of this feasibility study. But at the end of the day, we have made very, very good progress. We've got a high purity of end product. And at the end of the day, all the OEMs that have done the work so far have come back very, very positively in terms of what they've seen. And that obviously bodes well for going into offtake contracts. So in terms of the feasibility study itself, we can produce literally as much as the market can absorb. We're not defined by what our production strategy is, not defined by what we've got down there. As I said, we've got 2 to 3 billion tons, and it's very accessible. It's all about what we can sell. So the work we've been doing has been about trying to get it approved by the parties that are going to end up buying it. And we've made huge progress. In December, we announced an initiative that we're working on through the European Union, which will ultimately mean we're going to be the exclusive sole supplier of natural flake graphite into a big bus initiative to produce EV buses in Europe. So that's one angle where we can be selling a lot of product into. And if we get to the end of this feasibility study and we've got a lot of these types of arrangements in place, it obviously bodes very well in terms of the quantum that we can ultimately produce and sell, and ultimately obviously gives us the best possible results. So yeah, it's a slightly different type of feasibility study because you're not restrained by what you can mine and produce. It's about what you can sell. And that's very important because the market out there is very discerning, and we've had to go through a very complex process to get to where we are right now.
Yeah, so I mean, in that context, do you have any news flow coming up in regard to individual items in the feasibility study, or have you got any other work underway which the market's going to hear about shortly?
Yeah, we've got a lot that's going on. As the market's well aware, we've been undergoing a lot of test work in Asia, and in particular in China, but also in Korea, where OEMs are testing our product. So we are fully expecting to get a lot of feedback soon, which will ultimately move into MOUs and offtake agreements. And that's a big part of this as we move forward to completing the DFS. But at the same time, we're trying to expand both our resources and our reserves because we fully anticipate that we're going to be able to sell a considerable quantity of graphite going forward with the relationships that we've built, including the downstream processing strategy, which allows us to actually sell to ourselves and then further purify and sell it as a 99.9% SPG. So we are undergoing a drilling program at the moment, which is going to increase well, we hope is going to increase our JORC resource and reserve, which will obviously impact that DFS considerably. So that's going to be a fair bit of news flow as well. And then we're talking to a number of key parties in terms of funding, because obviously that's another huge aspect of the DFS. So, and obviously infrastructure and all the work that's happening on the ground. So there's a lot of work happening everywhere. And the team hasn't really taken a break. We've just been plowing on through the Christmas time, and we know that we're watching the clock in terms of trying to get this done as quickly as possible. We're well aware of that. But at the same time, we've got a very unique strategy in terms of this downstream processing. So we want to make sure that the study that we compile for that is as good as the one we do for Orom-Cross. So yeah, lots of work going on, lots of news flow, and we're making big strides, and hopefully we'll be able to complete everything on time.
So speaking a bit more broadly then, what would you say the company's goals for 2025 are?
Well, first and foremost, complete that DFS, and obviously complete it successfully. And that's got to incorporate the downstream processing strategy, because half of what we sell is going to be sold to that purification beneficiation facility down about 180 kilometers away from Orom-Cross. And so that, I guess, amalgamated DFS is critical. But, you know, in order to get to that point, we've got to complete the drilling program, which is about nearly 7,000 meters of drilling to be, and it starts right now. So, yeah, and obviously the offtake contracts as well. And then, assuming that we complete the DFS successfully, the next step beyond that is decision to mine.
So you mentioned the crucial factor of being able to sell the product and customers. Why don't we finish up by having you talk a little bit about the graphite market in general, Mike, and particularly perhaps also mentioning tariffs, which are a hot buzzword in the press right now.
Yeah, it's a really interesting market, because I think the general perception out there amongst anyone listening is that there's a whole lot of graphite around and it will always fulfill demand. And to be honest, nothing could be further from the truth. It's very, very difficult to get graphite projects up and into production through this whole qualification process, getting them funded. And so I think there's going to be a real shortage of new projects coming online going forward. And yet at the same time, we're seeing demand increasing all the time. Some of the Western press considers that the EV world is died a death. That's not true. The majority of EVs being produced and obviously being sold are happening in Asia, and in particular in China. And that market is absolutely racing ahead. So the biggest market is growing fast. It doesn't necessarily matter that the smaller markets out west are going a bit slower. The demand that we're going to be selling graphite into is Asia. And obviously, if we can be one of those very few miners that make it into production going forward, I think we've got a big opportunity there. With regards to the tariffs, look, I don't think anyone really knows where this is going to go. We all read the same press, and we all hear that America in particular, and I guess to a lesser extent Europe, are going to impose tariffs, if they haven't already, on China. And the question is, how much will they retaliate and in what way? Definitely, we've seen that there's a list of critical minerals that they have picked in terms of what they might retaliate. And we don't know how they will retaliate, whether they'll turn off the taps completely or whether they'll restrict supply or what may happen. But there's a lot of threat and a lot of fear that purified graphite will be one of those aspects used in retaliation. And if it does amount to literally the taps being turned off, then the OEMs, the big end users that have invested heavily into downstream facilities, battery plants, etc., are going to be looking for opportunities to get that product from somewhere outside of China. So this is the kind of landscape that we think over the next couple of years. And if it does, obviously us not only mining and producing a concentrate in Uganda, but also having a downstream facility that produces 99.95% purified graphite may be of huge interest to many people going forward. So it's a world that's going to be, I guess, we think of it as the roller coaster ride. I suspect we've got a lot to watch and wait for, but I think it creates opportunity for us. And we're going to do everything we can to get a successful feasibility study out and then ultimately move into production, so we can be seen as one of those very few graphite miners that are available in that market.
Well, we'll be watching with great interest. It sounds like you've got a very busy year ahead of you, and we wish you all the best with it. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, and yeah, I look forward to it.